Okay, Meredith, unless there's any reason not to do so.
All good.
Thumbs up. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 15th meeting of the Montpelier Development Review Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Kate McCarthy. I'm the chair of the DRB, and I'm going to go through a list and introduce the others here who are on the DRB and supporting its work tonight. Please raise your hand when I say your name. We have with us board members, RJ Adler. Okay. Roger Krantz can pipe up by phone. He is here by phone, I believe.
That's right.
Thank you, Roger. Welcome. Rob Goodwin. Joe Kiernan. Michael Lazorchuk is here by phone.
Yep, present.
Jean Leon. Hi, Jean. Kevin O'Connell is our vice chair. We will be, and Claire Rock is a DRB alternate. Hello, Claire, welcome. We're supported by Meredith Crandall, who you all know and appreciate as I do. Mike Miller, our Zoom moderator, planning director for the city. And then Tammy Furry is the recording secretary for the DRB. Thank you, Tammy. All right, so I'll turn it over now to Meredith, who will describe the mechanics of our online process for those, particularly for those who may be watching on ORCA.
Meredith, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So this is a lot for public who might be out there and watching via ORCA and not actually on the meeting, and especially and also for those who are on a remote DRB meeting for the first time. So due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 0120 and Act 92, the Development Review Board is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, the Development Review Board is providing public access to this meeting by hosting a video conference meeting, including both video and telephone access options via the Zoom platform. All members of the Development Review Board have the ability to communicate at the same time during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting in real time. So if you're home and watching via ORCA and you decide that you want to participate, you can either use this link, you can just plug it right into your browser and access the Zoom meeting, or you can also call in at this phone number, 929-205-6099, and use the meeting ID password that's listed here, and I'm sorry, meeting ID and then the password. We did give notice to the public previously on this access information via posting of the agenda. Instructions are also on the city's website at the pending applications for public hearings page that you can find through the agendas and meetings page or through the Department of Planning and Community Development. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting, please email the meeting moderator, Mike Miller, at mmiller@montpelier-bt.org. Further, if anyone is on the meeting in the Zoom platform and you're having problems, or you have a question as how to do something, you may message Mike through the chat function in Zoom. I'm going to leave this information up as I discuss the last few bits about participating in the meeting. So once you're logged in, you should have an opportunity to tell the moderator which applications you wish to comment on. I think I know everybody who's on right now. Yeah, I don't think anybody new has come in. And so when the chair announces that the time for public comment on a particular application arrives, the moderator will unmute members of the public based on the order that you submit your intent to speak. And then if you're interested in speaking and you didn't say that you would like to speak previously, you can raise your hand if you're in the video version of Zoom, or you can unmute yourself and state your name, and city staff will add you to the queue of those ready to talk. Once the chair has recognized you to participate at a particular time, the moderator will unmute your microphone to confirm that you can be heard, or you can unmute it yourself. That seems to be the way things are working a lot lately. And then you're free to provide your questions or comments. Please aim to keep them to 2 minutes at the initial comment period. Members will have the opportunity to respond or ask questions of you, and the applicant may also have an opportunity to respond. The chair may grant additional time for speakers who have follow-up questions or comments. After you finish speaking, either mute your microphone yourself or it will be muted for you. This helps prevent feedback and background noise that disturbs the meeting. The chair will then move on to the next person. If in the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be continued to a time and place certain. And please note that all votes taken during this meeting will be done by roll call vote. I'm going to hand it back over to Kate.
Thanks, Meredith. All right, speaking of votes taken by roll call, the next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as printed? Motion by RJ, second?
Second.
Second by Kevin. I'm going to go through your name and say yay or nay. RJ? Yes. Roger?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yep.
Claire?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. We have an agenda. Thank you very much.
Claire, could I just
Next item on.
could I just make one small clerical point, just for your own records? On
Sure.
your number 8 on your review the minute meetings, I think you mean May 18th, 2020. It says February.
It actually is February. Those got missed in getting approved previously. We had a
Okay.
big long gap. So
Okay.
those are actually February 18th minutes.
Okay.
I did miss a 0 in 2020.
Okay.
Those are February.
Okay, I thought that was referring to our meeting, so I'm sorry.
Those got approved at the last meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so comments for the chair. Well, the first thing I'd like to note is that this will be RJ's last meeting with us, I believe. RJ, you've been great for the brief time that we've had you with us, and we congratulate you on moving on to the next step. Thanks for jumping right in while living in Montpelier and supporting this board and its work. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, folks. I'm about to purchase a house in Berlin, so didn't know that was going to happen, or else I wouldn't have put everyone through having a short-term member on the board. But I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun, and I'm sorry to leave.
Thanks, RJ. It's been good to meet you, at least on video. Maybe someday we'll meet in person. All right, so also under comments for the chair, I'd just like to make a few remarks as we get underway. I want to first thank everybody for who's been taking time, a lot of time, and to invest in their project and invest in these meetings. And I use the word investment very intentionally because I know projects are a lot of real work, and so are these meetings. I also know that everybody's really dealing with quite a lot right now. We all have a lot going on in different dimensions of our lives, and we're all doing our best. And as we get underway tonight, I just want to remind people again that this is a quasi-judicial process. It's not a courtroom. And furthermore, it's a process that's overseen by volunteers who are doing their best to strike a balance between the needs and desires of people investing in our community, which we of course appreciate and need, and the rights and interests of abutters. And at the end of the day, the requirements of our zoning bylaw, which is the filter, the guide that we ultimately use to make sure that we can strike this balance. So as we get underway, I'm going to ask people to bear with us as we work to do our jobs, our volunteer jobs, and please do be patient if we err on the side of process in order to avoid excluding anyone. I do appreciate your help and courtesy as we all find our way in the times where we are. So thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the continuation of 105 State Street And with that, it is continued here, and it's here before us with a new site design and circulation proposal in response to our comments at the end of the last meeting on June 1st. So I will note that the building remains largely the same. So Meredith, could you please review the status of the application and identify some of the main changes to the application and the main outstanding questions?
Yep. So this is, some of this is going to be repeat for those of you who've been here, but I want to make sure that anybody who's viewing via ORCA is aware of what's going on and a little bit of background. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So 105 State Street, applicant is seeking major site plan approval for a new 3-story building with commercial uses, including conditional use of a drive-up bank teller and ATM at the rear of the building, and a new curb cut for vehicles that deals with Governor Davis. And this new design, this is now a where vehicles enter the drive-through for the ATM and bank teller. So the subject parcel is located in Urban Center 1 zoning district, as well as the design control district. For anybody looking from home, this is important because there are multiple specific things for Urban Center 1, like the fact that setbacks are at 0 feet. They can build right up to the property line. And because this went through design review, the Development Review Board doesn't have to look at the separate site plan design standards. So the public hearing on this application opened on May 18th, was then continued to June 1st, and is continuing again this evening. At the end of the June 1st meeting, after a deliberative session, the board indicated that it couldn't approve the original application as presented due to a failure to comply with Section 3010 vehicle access and circulation requirements, specifically the requirement for adequate access and circulation to prevent traffic congestion on the street and traffic conflicts, including service vehicles, passenger vehicles, parking, drive-through lanes, bicyclists, and pedestrians within the site. Quote, this is Section 3010, subsection B. For the board of particular concern, potential vehicle and pedestrian conflicts between vehicles leaving the previously proposed ADA parking space and pedestrians on the sidewalk along State Street, and also internal vehicle circulation issues given possibilities for parked vehicles on that original site plan needing to turn around in the adjacent right-of-way. And so applicant redesigned their proposal to address these issues, as seen starting on page 138 of the meeting packet. This first page is a June 12th email from engineer Brian Lane Carnes. Following that is the actual redesigned site plan. So that shows on page 141. So staff and personnel from the Department of Public Works, Tom McCardle and Corey Line, have reviewed the redesign. Comments from them and the city's planning director can be viewed on further pages within that meeting packet. We'll pull these up on the share screen as needed. Really, there's two major issues remaining that I have spotted from this redesign. The original, whether this redesign complies with the Section 3010 issues that the board raised previously. And then also whether the redesigned drive-through, which has an ATM kiosk versus being an ATM flush inside the building, meets the special use standards of Section 3115 and the conditional use standards. Kate, I don't know if, there's stuff in the staff report and other, potential staff suggestions that are in there, but I think this might be a good place to stop. That's okay with you?
Mm-hmm. It is. I think our focus tonight is going to be on the things that have changed substantially, and we will not spend much time on those that have not, because those have been pretty thoroughly vetted in our previous conversations. So thanks, Meredith. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we move on?
I think, so there's one little side comment that I did get from the Tom McCardle from the Department of Public Works that came in late this afternoon. That's something that Brian Lane Carnes may need to address, but it's kind of minor. Should I throw it out now or wait till we're getting into the specifics of the redesign?
Let's throw it out now so that when the applicant presents the new site plan, that can be integrated or answered if appropriate.
Perfect. So Tom said, quote, "It would be advisable for the applicant to meet the pedestrian access route," so this is PAR standard from the U.S. Access Board for the public right-of-way when it comes to the redesigned sidewalk adjacent to the ADA access space. So it's advisable. It's not something that has to happen under the zoning regulations, but that PAR standard is for that to be a 4-foot width sidewalk. And I believe that on the redesigned, it's actually 3.75 feet. But again, that's to be advisable.
Okay, so we can hear more about that and the choice to go with 3.75. Great. So here's how I'm planning to proceed through this. With the options remain a little bit flexible. We'll start by hearing the presentation of the new site design from the applicant. I hope that can take about 15 minutes or so. Then DRB members will have an opportunity to ask questions about it. Then we'll hear from any interested parties who are present and wishing to speak, no more than 8 minutes each. And DRB members will then have an opportunity to ask those folks any questions they may have. And from there, I expect that we will likely go into the staff report, but we will see if additional questions need to be raised. Please address all your questions through the chair if you wish to ask any. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Lozon and his team.
I'm sorry, I have something I have to say before the applicant starts.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Please go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so since the last DRB meeting, I've entered into a personal business relationship with some of the individuals that are before the board today. As a result, I'll be recusing myself from the remainder of the DRB's business involving the 105 State Street redevelopment, including any deliberative sessions that may happen. I will be returning for the 206 River Street project hearing.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that statement. And Meredith has one more thing to add as well.
Just because of the shuffle with Joe stepping out, so that we actually have 8 other DRB members here, only 7 of which can actually vote at a time. So I don't know if Roger is recusing himself because he wasn't at the first 2, wasn't able to participate in the first 2 full hearings, or whether he or Claire, whether either of them reviewed the prior hearing minutes or recordings, because I just want to make sure we know who's actually voting on this application.
This is Roger. I didn't participate in the previous meetings. I have reviewed some of the material, but not all of it because I wasn't planning on participating in this application tonight, or voting on it.
Okay. Thanks, Roger. That's fine. And Claire, did you prepare and intend to participate in the review and voting of this application, or are you here? Will you be participating in the next application?
I have reviewed the materials. I've read the minutes from the May 18th and June 1st meeting, and was prepared to participate and be a voting member on this application.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Claire, then. Okay. And now can we turn to Mr. Lozon? Thank you.
May I ask the nature of the conflict? Is it a business relationship within a butter that the DRB member has?
I'm going to see if Joe's on any longer before I speak for him. He is not on, but he has disclosed that he will be engaging the services of some of the people from the applicant's team.
Oh,
your team.
Okay. Because I was just going to say I didn't have an issue with it, but no, he's going to do what he needs to do. Thanks very much. As Meredith said, the board at the last meeting, the board indicated that they had 2 issues with the site plan. Through this redesign, I think we've addressed both of those issues. It's a new site plan, but it doesn't look very different if you flip it. And that's essentially all we've done. And what that did is blend the traffic to meet the flow of traffic with 99 State. So rather than tell you what, you've got a long evening, rather than go on and on, I'm just going to turn it over to Brian, let him get into the specifics as quickly as possible.
Great, thanks, Tom. And I apologize for the lighting on my video, sitting in front of a west-facing window right now at sunset, so gonna be a little blown out. So let me bring up the new site plan on the screen. So as Tom was saying, the essential redesign of the site is that we have mirrored the orientation of the building and the parking in relation to what was previously proposed. So instead of the parking being off of the shared right-of-way with 99 and 107 State Street, the parking is now accessed off of Governor Davis Avenue. So same 3 parking spots, 2 regular parking spots and 1 accessible parking spot. Due to the mirroring of the location of the accessible space and the accessible access aisle have been reversed north to south. That's because if you only have 1 ADA space on your site, has to be a van accessible space. If it's a van accessible space, the aisle has to be on the passenger side. That was also actually beneficial for the project because it moved this space further away from both the crosswalk and the intersection with State Street. So that resolved any issues with the conflicts from a car backing out of this, either from cars on State Street or folks in the crosswalk. And I could talk about that more specifically later. The other kind of major result of the mirroring of the site plan is that now, as Tom mentioned, the drive-through lane goes the other way. So the entrance to the drive-through is off of Governor Davis Avenue, and the exit is through the shared right-of-way. Therefore, the cars coming out of the drive-through are going in the same direction as the one-way traffic that comes around 99 State Street. Although obviously this will be a two-directional access because it's the only access back to 107 State Street. Because the cars are now going through the other direction through the drive-through, we had to move the ATM window into a kiosk on the north side of the site, because otherwise it would have been on the passenger side of the cars, which just doesn't work. Meredith mentioned continuing to meet the standards of the specific standards for drive-through uses. So we are maintaining the canopy, obviously moved down to the, flipped over with the building. So there'll still be a canopy over the same canopy we had before over the drive-through service space. The other question regarding the specific drive-through standards was whether this relocation of the the video screen or whatever it's going to be and the pneumatic tube to the other side against the property line, increased impacts for light and noise for neighboring properties. And in fact, it'll reduce impacts from light and noise from neighboring properties because now if there is a video screen, the light from the video screen will be pointed south towards the building, as well as the speaker that's used for communication pointed away from the neighboring property. And so those 2 things are an improvement, and otherwise the impacts from light and noise are similar to the ones that we had addressed in our original application. Just to run quickly through the other things that had to change to make this work. The building is 3 feet smaller in width than it used to be in order to accommodate the turning movement of cars out of the drive-through and into the common right-of-way. And then we moved the end of the stairs and the landscape planter all the way up to the edge of the right-of-way in the front, again, to accommodate this turning movement back here. So let's just take a quick look. Oops, that's not what I want. Sorry. This one. So this is the movement of a car as it goes through the drive-through lane. And I just wanted to bring up, because I mentioned briefly in the previous hearings that this is the passenger car design vehicle from the State Association of Highway Officials. And I did say that it was large, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands how large this vehicle is when they're looking at this diagram. So this design vehicle is 7 feet wide and 19 feet long with an 11-foot wheelbase. That's bigger than a Chevy Suburban, and it's bigger than a Toyota Tacoma. So if this thing is getting through here without problems, then there's any vehicle that can't make this turn is a box truck and shouldn't be going through the ATM anyway. But we just wanted to show that the vehicle can access the drive-through from Governor Davis Avenue and come out of the drive-through without encroaching outside of the 10.5-foot right-of-way on the exit. I also, and I don't think that anyone has seen this yet, but I also prepared what it would look like for the vehicle backing out of the accessible.
Brian?
Yeah.
I don't think the screen is, or at least it's not changing for me. I don't know if it's changing for you. Is it supposed to be changing? What we're looking at?
I'm not seeing anything different on your screen.
You're not seeing the vehicle turning movement?
No, I'm seeing some flashes.
Hold on a second. See if I can bring it up. It's this one. Are you guys seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Those, you can see the routes.
Right. So you can see here the car on Governor Davis Avenue and then proceeding through the drive-through. So you can see here that this Chevy Suburban Toyota Tacoma can make this turn out of the drive-through space without encroaching onto the off of the 10-foot share right-of-way. And this line here is the front corner of the bumper, and the next line is where the tires go. So the other thing I want to share regarding turning movements, which would be this one. So can everyone see now we've switched to showing the movement of the car coming out of the accessible space? Okay. So again, this car now easily can back out of this space and turn around and leave before it hits the crosswalk. So these two lines of the crosswalk here. And so the car can come back, and I don't have it turning until it's well outside the space. And I would just point out that the back of the adjacent space to the north is here. And in this movement, the car doesn't start turning until back here. So it's easily able to back out and leave the space onto Governor Davis Avenue without going onto the crosswalk, generously. I also would like to just point out, because this was something that we discussed with Tom McCardle, is that when this car is at its rear, its southerly most point backing out, there is space for a person who's coming down State Street and making a right turn. If they don't see this car backing out, there's enough space with the crosswalk and then the space for the cars that are parked in the parallel parking spaces for another car to wait here and not block the traffic coming up and down State Street. So it's a significant improvement to both the potential conflicts with pedestrians and eliminates the conflicts with traffic on the site that we've been discussing and doesn't create new conflicts along State Street. And then just really briefly, I don't know that this is really relevant for zoning, but we did, because we flipped these two, the curb ramp here is now lowered all along here rather than being in a bump out, because there just wouldn't have been room to get the ramp down and have a bump out next to this car. Oh, I should briefly address Tom McCardle's comment on the pedestrian access way width. So that there's two versions of the federal accessibility standards. One version is for public buildings and private developments, and the other version is for ADA accessibility within public rights of way. So the 4-foot minimum width that Tom is referencing is for accessible facilities within a right of way, and that standard doesn't apply to this sidewalk, which is on a private development and intended to provide access from these parking spaces, which are devoted to this development and getting folks who need to get there accessibly into the door where the elevator is. So the minimum width of an accessible way under the ADA standards that apply to private developments is 3 feet, and we exceed that with the 3.75 feet minimum width here. We also modified this design at Tom's request. We had this cutting in this corner a little bit here, and we straightened out this sidewalk. So, while there is this point at 3.75 feet here, it's right at the bottom of the ramp, by the time you get up to the top of the ramp, you're well over 4 feet here anyway. So, you know, our contention is that we're meeting the relevant ADA design standards with the width of the sidewalk there. And so with that, I'd open it up to any questions from the board members.
Thank you very much, Brian. Really appreciate that overview. Board members, please ask your questions if you have them. I can see everybody now, so if you'd please just raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, you can just pipe up. Rob.
Yes, so on the opposite side of the building, 10-foot right-of-way side, there's a sidewalk there. Is that intended to be a pedestrian access to the building in the rear, or is that just for 105 State?
So similarly, it's the same as it was before. The sidewalk there is intended to access the egress door that's at the back of the building. There's been no discussion or you know, intention of having that sidewalk be a connector to the property behind.
Claire, you had your hand up.
Just
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
I mean, we certainly wouldn't have any objection if we wouldn't object to folks walking down the sidewalk and accessing 107 State Street, but it could be a little problematic because there's no pedestrian lane in the parking area at 107. So it would be likely that a pedestrian would use our sidewalk on the other side of the building. It would be a little safer for them.
Yeah, and I was just meaning to say that it's not our intention to provide access there, so we haven't provided a crosswalk across the drive-through lane, or there's nothing on the other side of it for folks to land on the 107 State Street property.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Claire and then RJ. Claire, did you have your hand up?
Yeah,
go right ahead.
Could you clarify the location of the recycling door? I believe that was located on the Governor Davis side on the previous plan. Is that also being switched? And so that type of recycling would then be serviced from the kind of the alleyway or the right-of-way side?
So it used to be, that enclosure used to be on the right-of-way side, and now it's on the Governor Davis side. But really the intention is that what's going to be stored in here for trash is toters. So they're probably going to be taken out and pulled up onto the sidewalk to be picked up, you know, early in the morning, which is what I'm sure when that happens in downtown. So there's no intention for like a garbage truck to be backing up to these doors or anything, because the garbage will come out and move down to the curb line.
Okay, thanks. RJ.
So just going back to Rob's question about the sidewalk on the on the east side of the building, near that door, just to make it more accessible, can that curb there be cut into the ground so somebody with a wheelchair feels more safe if they do choose to walk or roll along that side, or is that like open up too many cans of worms?
So we can't put a ramp there because we have the egress door there, and we need a flat landing for the egress door. But again, that's the same. It's the same situation it's exactly the same as it was before when it was over here. You know, and there's, you know,
is there
if any pedestrians want to access back here, they have to walk up the right of way. So is
the curb cut on the northwest side of the building for access? You talked about the ramp over on the you talked about the ramp where it was 3.75 feet here, but is there a curb cut over here so people could walk that way?
Up here?
Yeah.
No, again, it's not our intention to provide a curb cut, and you know, there's really, if you go across here, you're really crossing into where the cars are parked.
Oh, okay.
So if you went across here, there'd be no aisle or anything for you, if you were in a wheelchair, to go between the cars that are parked.
So we don't want to funnel people in that direction anyway.
No.
Fair enough.
Okay, thanks. Other questions from board members? Roger or Michael joining us by phone and having a hard time raising their hands, would you like to ask any questions?
This is Michael. I'm good. Thank you.
Right, and Roger is just observing, I'm remembering.
I'm just observing, Kate, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So if there are no more questions for the board members on the revised proposal, what I'd like to do next is offer a chance for other interested parties to present questions or new evidence, things that we have not heard in the last two hearings, based on the changed items in this proposal. We're looking primarily at that which has changed between the last hearing and this one. I would invite comments from interested parties.
This is John Russell. I'd like to make some comments here.
Please go right ahead.
I'm sort of curious as to how this is all happening this afternoon without allowing any, either basically not allowing the public to see the change in the building. I didn't get the new pictures of the building until the weekend. And now we're seeing changes to parking, et cetera, here on Monday night, basically. So I don't know how that works in terms of governance. But that
perhaps I could.
Be that as it may, that's a comment. I don't need a reply. You guys can figure that out for yourself, and maybe the courts will figure it out later. So one of my concerns is the narrowing of the aisle from State Street back to 105 and 99, even though 99 is not here. If there's nowhere for basically there's nowhere for anybody to dodge. Can't sort of hide behind the cars the way it was last 2 weeks ago. For people that are walking up that basically 11-foot now, a little over 11-foot width. That does seem a little dangerous there. Another comment is that we'll have cars queuing up out on Aiken, waiting to turn right to go in and cash their check or what have you. That doesn't look very safe at all. And they'll be queuing up behind people trying to unpark from these new parking spaces. And the new parking spaces are driving over or backing out over a sidewalk that people will be using. And it's already been mentioned that probably people will be using that sidewalk to get to 107, maybe because it's so narrow out on the other side. So that's part of it. Also, the van that's carrying somebody in who requires a disabled van is backing out into blind traffic. Nobody is going to be noticing as they're turning right onto Aiken that somebody's trying to back out simultaneously. There isn't any policeman saying, you can come out, will you please stop, don't make the turn yet, etc. That's just too close, no matter what you may think. Maybe the people that are thinking that don't drive. That's a possibility, especially in Montpelier. What about the totes? We're talking about garbage and totes and things like that out on the public sidewalk. Apparently, Casella and Myers come by with an automatic truck that picks up the totes. They need to be able to get close to the curb there. but there's a parking space there, has been, and there's only one, but there is a parking space there. So neither Myers nor Casella would be able to pick up the totes from there if there's a car parked there legally. So that's just sort of the beginning. It just doesn't seem that this is really a building that's designed for the close circumstances that are here in this part of Montpelier. It's a major place for vacationers to come when they're not walking around behind masks. So there's oftentimes people that are completely unfamiliar with the area. There's also a lot of I don't know if I'm running out of my 8 minutes, but there's also a tremendous number of state employees that walk down that side of the street and go, on into the city center. So it just doesn't seem like this is a good idea for a building of this nature. I don't see any problem with the building. The building's a building. Tom's got problems with flood, which I think is pretty ridiculous. I don't agree with the flood problem, and Tom's done what he can to ameliorate that for his potential tenants, but this doesn't look like a place that this building can go. This style of type of vehicle access building doesn't look it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Russell. What we'll do is hear from any others who wish to speak on this, and then we'll turn it back over to the applicant. And if anyone else wishes to speak, I just remind you, please focus on the things that are new about the project. And as was referenced, we're looking at about an 8-minute window. So is there anyone else wishing to speak about the redesign who is not the applicant?
There's nobody here.
Alicia's here and Patrick Malone are both here. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the sidewalk on Governor Davis is on the opposite side of the building, correct? Brian?
That is my understanding. And if there's nothing else from people who wish to speak about the project, maybe what I could do now is turn it back to Tom and Brian to address any of the questions. I'm particularly interested in your response on things that that we're reviewing tonight. The narrowing of the question regarding the narrowing of the aisle back to 107, the new parking space and whether it conflicts with a sidewalk, as was just asked, and if you could explain, we've heard how the backing out of the ADA space works with leaving visual if you're turning right off of State Street, so I don't think you need to speak to that again. But Brian, or Tom, if you'd like to speak to those other things.
Sure.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Or Tom, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Mr. Russell made a couple comments about cars backing over sidewalks. There's no car that backs over a sidewalk anywhere with this new proposal. So I'll just go over that quickly one more time. Well, that wasn't quite the one I wanted, but it'll work. Again, we show that this car doesn't back over the sidewalk or the crosswalk here. There's, and this sidewalk is inside of the spaces. So in terms of narrowing the lane over here, I just point out again that the only legal access to 107 State Street is this 10.5 foot width right of way. And we're leaving a little bit more than that, and certainly matching what exists there now with the Jersey barriers that are placed along the edge of the existing parking area. So there's no change to the width of the right of way compared to how it stands at the moment. There was a comment about the stacking and potential conflicts with Governor Davis Avenue. So there's no change to what we presented about why the one service space and 2 stacking spaces are adequate for this use. There's probably functionally another spot that someone could sit here if it became really necessary at high peak times. And unlike the previous design, if the drive-through is full, someone can continue on Governor Davis Avenue and circle around the block and come back, which wasn't really possible with the previous design. So we presented evidence that the amount of stacking spaces is adequate, and also improved the ability for folks to make a different decision if need be with the drive-through. I think that's what you're looking for. Kate, remind me if there's one I missed. Okay, great.
Oh, the garbage.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, I mean the garbage. You know, it's no different than any other business in the downtown that only has access to the front of the sidewalk. So it's whatever needs to be done to manage the garbage at this site is no different than any other downtown site on State Street west of here. I'm sorry, east of here, that way.
I must admit, I've never seen the tote.
You've never seen a tote? They're green. Sometimes they're blue. I've seen black ones.
Okay, sarcasm works.
That
too.
sounds like it. That would.
I was just describing a tote, Mr. Russell.
But
I think that I, as one DRB member, I think I've received sufficient evidence on totes. Are other DRB members, do any other DRB members have any questions with regards to anything we just discussed, or other aspects of this application about which you have remaining questions? Yes, Claire.
Thank you. At the beginning, I think Meredith identified some points that she had on this application that may not have been included in the recent email communication, and I was wondering if she could just remind me of those again.
Oh, the stuff that wasn't circulated previously? Is that what you're talking about?
I thought at the beginning, when you were introducing the most recent submittals, that there were some items that you, some comments that you had that may not have been included in the email that you circulated.
Yeah, so that was just the sidewalk width, the 3.75 versus 4 feet. Everything else has been circulated.
Thank you.
Great. Great. Well, the last thing I'd like to do before we deliberate as a board is I would like to look at the special use and conditional use standards, so that, as Meredith suggested, we can assure that the drive-through redesign continues to meet those standards. So in our staff report, beginning on page, sorry, I'm finding the right page. The conditional use standards begin on page 21 and pertain just to the drive-through facility, not the whole project. Staff find that it will not burden community facilities and utilities. We've just discussed how traffic will or will not be impacted, and staff recommendation is that it meets those requirements. Similarly, neighborhood standards, character of the neighborhood standards, architectural compatibility, yards, lot coverage, landscaping, all of these, according to staff, are met to the satisfaction of the standards. Do board members have any questions about any new questions about conditional use with this redesign? Okay.
Rob, did you have a question?
Yep.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I guess I'd like to see the applicant maybe elaborate on the facility sufficient distance from the property line. This kiosk is going to be the closest bank drive-through to any property line in Montpelier. Just in my cursory review, it seems like a big part of this, and so I just didn't know if you could elaborate on your sort of counter to that. This meets that standard.
Oh, am I muted? No. Well, we believe it does. Brian, would you like to elaborate on that? We had a discussion about it. You know, this is zero setback. I don't know that. So when you talk about, you know, the standards for a drive-through, I don't believe the standards contemplate whether, you know, a counterclockwise traffic movement, which would mean when this ordinance was written, you would have to allow within the standards for the possibility of clockwise traffic movement, which would necessitate, and especially in this district where there's zero setback requirements, would necessitate placing it close to the property line.
And I would add that the standard that we need to meet here is that the facility is a sufficient distance from the property line to mitigate impacts to neighboring properties. So as we presented in our original application, we don't expect that light or noise from this particular drive-through window is going to really exceed what's happening in the background of downtown Montpelier, with traffic noise on the street and parking and general noise around there. And additionally, while it's closer to the property line, the additional, well, there's not additional noise, but the source of noise being placed closer to the property line is mitigated by the fact that the direction of the sound from the kiosk is now turned around and facing into the site rather than before when it was, 12 feet from the property line, but it was facing the adjacent property owner. So due to the mitigating factor of the kiosk facing the other direction into the property instead of away from it, we believe that there's no setback that's necessary to avoid undue adverse impacts on the neighboring properties.
All right, thank you. And Rob, thank you for that question related to the special use standards for drive-through. That was the main outstanding issue on which we needed to collect some evidence. All right, DRB members, are there any further questions before we enter into a deliberative session together? Okay, so I propose, yes, Mr. Lozon.
Just one question. If you're deliberating for our benefit, I know you have other things on your agenda. I don't need an answer this evening. If it would make it easier for you to simply, we'll sign off, you can continue with your agenda, whatever you're comfortable doing. Just wanted to.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. We were going to deliberate for the benefit of resolving it while you were present. I'm hearing that it's okay with you if we don't do that and you hear back tomorrow.
Kate, weren't we also
yes, Meredith.
Weren't we also going to do that so that RJ would be able to participate since he wouldn't be able to stay on until 10 o'clock? Or however late?
That's true. So, thank you, Meredith. That's a good reminder. We are going to take a pause and if the board agrees, enter into a deliberative session mid-meeting here. You don't need to remain for our answer. If we come back and you're not here, we won't feel that we've been left at the dance.
I'll be here.
But thank you for that option. Yes, Kevin.
Yes, Joe. So I'd just like to make the motion to adjourn to deliberative session for the application.
Second.
Motion by Kevin, second by RJ. I am going to conduct a roll call on that motion.
Technically not adjourned to deliberative session, is it, Meredith?
No, it's not adjourned to just deliberative session. It's a short.
Just close the public meeting and then reconvene in deliberative session.
Right, but we're going to come back to the rest of the public meeting. So we can't close the public meeting completely. It's sort of a recess.
I agree to the amendment to my motion.
Yeah, the motion is just to open a deliberative session.
Okay, we have a motion to open a deliberative session and a second. I will take a vote on that motion. RJ?
Aye.
Roger? Oh, Roger's not voting on
yes.
this one. Sorry, Roger. But he said
okay.
Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Joe? Oh, Joe's not on this one either. You can tell I'm using a list. Michael? Michael, who may be on mute.
Yes.
Michael?
Thanks for unmuting
Thank
me
you.
there.
Jean?
Thank you.
No problem. Jean?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We will open a deliberative session in a separate Zoom call. Those who wish to remain on this Zoom call, it will remain open. We will be back as soon as we reasonably can. Thank you very much. We are also waiting for a couple of DRB members. I would entertain a motion regarding 105 State Street. RJ.
Motion to approve the new 3-story building and changes of use, including the drive-through conditional use as presented in application number Z 2020-0027 and supporting supplemental materials subject to the following conditions of approval. 1, concrete materials on the building facades will be the color tinted to match the granite materials on the remainder of the facade as closely as possible. 2, applicant will ensure compliance with erosion control practices of 3008.d during the construction activities. 3, within 30 days of this decision and prior to issuance of any permit, applicant shall submit to the zoning administrator professionally prepared lighting plan identifying the locations for all outdoor light fixtures with key to appropriate lumens issued by each type.
Thank you for the motion. We have a motion from RJ. Is there a second? Please unmute if you'd like to. Motion from RJ. Second?
I will make the second. I do have a procedural question, though. Do we need to officially reopen the public hearing?
It was never closed, was it?
The public hearing wasn't closed, so,
good.
so I believe not. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from board members? Hearing none, I will call a roll vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
RJ?
Yes.
Michael?
No.
Jean?
You're muted.
Jean, you're muted.
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Thank you, Jean. Rob?
No.
Sorry, Rob? And
No.
I vote yes. We have 5 yeses and 2 noes for the motion, and the project is approved. And I will turn it over to Meredith next to let us know, let you know what the next steps are.
So the next step is a written decision. I'll work on that as quickly as I can. Technically, we have up to 45 days from the close of the hearing, which is now with the motion. It's going to be much sooner than 45 days, if at all humanly possible, much sooner. But I'm human. So, so that will get issued. If you get me the lighting plan before that gets issued, then I can issue the decision at the same time that the permit is issued. Otherwise, the decision will go out. Then when I get the lighting plan that's required, I'll be able to issue the permit. There is a 30-day appeal window after the written decision for people to appeal that written decision. Just note if there is a significant gap between the written decision and the permit getting issued because of needing to meet the conditions, there is an additional 15-day appeal period after the permit. So those can overlap or they can be staggered out depending on how everything gets met with the conditions. If you have any questions, you can email me. That wasn't clear. Sorry, it was a lot of information.
That concludes our discussion of 105 State Street, and I thank you all again sincerely for your time and your work on this, and best of luck with your next step.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
You too. All right. Thank you, everyone.
I'm heading out now too. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, RJ.
Thank you, RJ. Appreciate your help and your service. See you around.
Yeah, good luck.
Joe,
good luck,
welcome.
RJ.
Yeah. Joe, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. So we are going to start our review of 260 River Street. There's no denying it's a bit late. It's 9 o'clock. I would like to dive in anyway because you've waited. I'm seeing some nodding from the engineer who's ready to go. And so without further ado, thank you very much for waiting. Looking forward to hearing about your project. This next application at 260 River Street is for major site plan and conditional use approval, potentially, at 260 River Street. So the first thing I would like to do is swear in anyone who will be speaking on this matter. So please unmute yourself, and then I'll swear you in. Raise your right hand, please, if you're going to give testimony. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. We have sworn in Lee Rosberg, John Rooney, Patrick Malone, and Alicia Feeler.
And Sarah Hoffmeyer.
And Sarah Hoffmeyer. Sorry, Sarah. Sarah's in. Okay. Thank you. So with that, Meredith, could you please provide us an overview of the project?
I will in 1 second. There's one other procedural item. We currently have 8 DRB members in attendance, including 2 alternates. So unless one of the DRB members has one of the standard members has a reason to recuse themselves, then, I mean, both of the alternates can stay and ask questions, but ultimately we have to figure out which 7 are going to be voting.
Okay. Are there any non-alternates who cannot vote?
I just wanted to add, no, I can vote. I just wanted to add to Meredith's comments. We can allow all the members, including the 2 alternates, to take part in the procedural process, including asking questions and so forth. And as far as the vote, it may or may not be tonight. It is already quite late. So my guess is that there's a good chance the public hearing would be carried forth to another day, in which case it's a matter of who is here at that time. That would really matter as far as this issue is concerned.
Good point, Kevin. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Thanks. That is how we'll proceed. Great, Meredith, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to try and keep this relatively brief given the hour. So first off, if you have the entire meeting packet in front of you, the staff report for this application actually begins at page 268 of the meeting packet. That's deep into the actual 260 River Street application. So 260 River Street is an existing 6+ acre parcel that currently contains the former Grossman's Lumber building, as well as a large amount of pavement that they used for on-site storage, outdoor storage of lumber and parking and delivery trucks. So there's a lot of impervious surface already. Applicant is seeking major site plan approval to construct a roughly 7,800 square foot building addition on top of the existing, well, not on top of, connecting to the adjacent 12,950 square foot building, along with associated revised drives, parking, utilities, landscaping, and grading, and to change the use of a parcel to office space and automobile repair and service with an accessory use of outdoor storage. The first big question for the DRB is a preliminary determination of whether the sewer-related facility use applies here. Because the proposed tenant for the parcel is a liquid waste hauler who will use the location as office and a repair maintenance building for their fleet of vehicles and storage of equipment related to the business. However, no waste is going to be actually treated on site. Sewer-related facilities require conditional use approval. I'm not going to go into the staff suggestions at this point. When you want them, ask for them if you didn't pull them out of the staff report. So that's the first big question that's going to need to be dealt with. Other than that, there are some questions about development in the riparian buffer. If at any point anybody needs a reference to where in the staff report that is, I'll be able to tell you. There's questions about internal pedestrian access and a potential issue with linking that to the public sidewalk, whether or not that's required. The board's going to need to look over the design standards of section 3207 because this did not go through design review. It's a major site plan, an addition, and so that those design and compatibility issues are going to need to be reviewed. There's a question about outdoor lighting and whether, this is minor, but whether the 20-foot tall freestanding lights along the internal walkway are acceptable given a preference for 12-foot high fixtures for pedestrian oriented spaces. There's also a request for a fence that's in the front yard to be more than 4.5 feet tall because it's being used as screening. So the DRB is going to have to make a determination on that. There were also issues highlighted in the staff report about a need for additional information to confirm compliance with the solar access and shading requirements. There's a minor suggestion for a condition on approval with regard to the automobile repair or service special use. And then some, again, suggestions for conditions with regard to erosion control, stormwater, and steep slopes that are really about having the proper documentation in the files.
Great, thank you, Meredith. And the applicant has received a copy of the staff report before today in the Friday packet with the rest of us, I assume. Great. Okay, so next what I'd like to do is turn it over to the applicant and give you time that you need. Maybe let's aim for about 15 minutes, a little more if you need it, to tell us about your project.
Great, thank you. I'm Alicia Filer with Malone Properties. So I'm going to, I don't know if I have, may I share a screen? Is that allowed?
Sure.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Is it working? Okay, great, thank you. So the property is along Route 2, also River Street. It's at the intersection, the roundabout with 302. And this entrance was constructed in 2009 as part of this roundabout project. Can you see my cursor as well or not? Great. So the entrance would stay exactly as it has been before. It was designed this way as part of the roundabout to maintain access to this lot when this previous entrance was closed as part of that construction. So the site is entered here. It's two-way traffic everywhere. The employee parking is located kind of on this main drive and then also in this parking area. Here's our building addition. There is a portion over on the northern side or this left side that's a two-story portion, and John can talk more about that when we get there. So these areas here on the very far north are proposed to be outdoor storage, and then this area in here is also outdoor storage with seven overhead doors for maneuvering vehicles in and out so that maintenance work can all be happening inside the building. And then also some of those vehicles, in the company vehicles would be located out in these outer parking spaces. So these outer parking spaces are severely oversized in comparison to a typical 8.5 by 18. They're, I think they're 12 by 30 are shown here just to make sure that the site would actually accommodate them. A couple of things. So we do have fencing over along here around these outdoor storage. And then there's also a split rail fence along the riparian buffer as a way to minimize foot traffic or access to that area, both because that area is the riparian buffer as well as part of the soils remediation and whatnot. We want to eliminate people from walking in that area. There is lighting along here. One of the items that Meredith did mention, these are the lights that she was referring to about being close to the sidewalk, which they're up against the sidewalk, but they're also lighting this large outdoor storage and also maneuvering area. And so to have lights not up against that would put them even further on the outside. It eliminates some of the lighting that would happen in that center portion. There is a landscaping plan that I didn't show on that site plan just because I wanted to keep it minimal. And I have other plans on there, but this is the proposed landscaping. We really want to make sure we have that screening. It's not just the fence around the outdoor storage, but to screen the whole kind of site from public view. There are a couple little areas of the stream bank in the riparian buffer that do have landscaping proposed. Those are our outfalls for our stormwater. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about those. So those are the main landscaping areas. Also, there's also one right here in the front of the building. There's kind of a recessed area that we chose to make sure that we could fit a couple trees, small sized trees in there to really break up the front of the building. This project does have a substantial amount of utilities being put into works, the biggest of which is the stormwater, and then also the wastewater system previously was on site. and we're connecting to the municipal sewer. If the building hasn't been used since in the 90s, so that wastewater system is no longer functioning. So then also, I think it's worth bringing up the grading plan right now, just to kind of give a very rough talk about it. So as you come in off the drives are mostly, everything drains internal to the parking areas and the drives. So there are catch basins collecting the water. Water isn't flowing off the site without going through the state regulated treatment that's required. So these areas here to the far north and then also to the far south are areas that we are, and I don't know if you can see the elevations, they're piles. So those areas are in order to contain the soil that is disturbed from the site development. Those are areas that we're looking to locate the soil to. And this is the kind of worst case scenario. We were trying to accommodate and make sure to plan for the majority of the soil to be here. If we should run into less of kind of the contaminated soils or the soils of concerns, then these might not be quite so quite the size. So I think that's a rough run through, but we can kind of get through individual items as we go, if that's okay with you.
Sure, that's okay. Great. Are there any, let's see, I think that with this one, what I would recommend we do is have DRB members raise questions as we go through the staff report. Is that amenable to DRB members? Nodding, yeah.
Yes.
And great, thanks. So I'll ask next if there are any other parties to be heard on this application other than the applicant, abutters or other interested parties. Okay. It looks like not. Oh yes, Meredith. Meredith, at this point, yes, I'm supposed to turn it over to you.
Sorry. So it doesn't look like there's any interested parties who are attending tonight, but I did get a last minute email from somebody, an abutter, that I'm going to need to read into the record because they couldn't attend and we couldn't get this out here. And I will post an actual copy of this on the city website. Well, I'll try and get it posted tomorrow. I don't actually have the authority to post it, but we'll get it posted tomorrow somehow. So this is from Mark Saba, S-A-B-A, who's president of Formula Ford Incorporated, that is at one of the adjacent properties. I don't remember exactly which address right now. So his email says that it was, let me get to the okay, so Formula Ford is glad to see a revitalization plan for the 260 River Street property. Our biggest concern is any air quality issues, foul smells, that could arise from the liquid waste being hauled and contained in the trucks while on the property that could adversely affect our business, employees, or customers. Formula Ford would like to be listed as an interested party as this project moves forward. Thank you for your time. And that's what I have.
Okay. Thank you, Meredith. So if there were someone here in person, I'd give the applicant a chance to respond to the comment raised by abutters or others who are interested, and I'll give you that same chance now if you'd like to address that.
Sure. We are not concerned with smells associated with this development. The waste hauling occurs and the trucks are all emptied prior to coming back to the site. If the, they're emptied at the Montpelier wastewater treatment facility or any other contracted wastewater facility. So there are a chance that trucks would be returning to the site after the wastewater facility has been closed for the evening, in which case those trucks would have sewage or other liquid waste on them. We're not concerned with the smells. The trucks are enclosed and they're not open to emit odors as the day goes on. If there's portalets, those are cleaned on site before they're transported back. They're on the site where they've been used, and then they return to the site in a clean state. So we're not concerned about the smells being an issue and certainly causing offense to neighboring properties.
All right. Thank you. Great. Any questions from board members about the project in general before we go into the specifics? Yeah, Claire.
Hi, thank you. I just had a question about the current condition of the site, and I had been looking at the site from going along the new bike path and had noticed like these big white, what looked like straw bales or hay bales that were along the riverbank, and have noticed there's been some site work out there, and noticed like some of them were like ripped open at some point, but then they look like there's been some earthwork there. And I was wondering if you could just kind of clarify the status of any of the earthwork activities that either have already happened at the site or which are currently happening at the site.
Sure, and we, Rosberg with Stone Environmental, maybe can help talk about that. There was a previous project for remediation, and that's, I think, what you're seeing out there. Lee, could you contribute?
Yeah, sure. There was a partial corrective action plan that was approved by the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, and we did a remedial action of removing coal tar and coal tar contaminated sediment from the bank of the river in December. That was done under Army Corps of Engineer and stream alteration permits, and that work's complete. And we're working towards revegetating the riverbank. And as far as I know, the site's been tidied up, and the large bags that you've seen have been removed. But yeah, that work was associated with dealing with an imminent risk of having coal tar directly in contact with surface water.
That's good. Thank you. And yeah, Kevin.
Hey, so could you just tell us what levels of review are required in addition to our review at the city level, environmental permits, state permits, so on?
Sure. So this project will require a state of Vermont municipal water and wastewater permit. It will require a construction stormwater permit, a 90/20, and then an operational stormwater permit for this site. It does not trigger any Act 250 because we're here with the DRB. There is public safety type of fire and building safety permit that is required through that. We aren't doing work in the stream, so we don't need to do any additional stream alteration permits. Those ones are kind of part of the previous project in the Army Corps. We're not interfering or disturbing any of the wetland or wetland buffer, so those aren't necessary for this project. So it's stormwater, construction stormwater, and then water, wastewater permits.
Thank you.
And building safety stuff.
Thank you, Kevin. Good question. Any last questions from DRB members on broad issues before we get into the specifics of the staff report?
The nature of the storage facilities laid out in the designs. What are you storing? What's the nature of the storage units throughout the property? Yeah.
Right over, yep, in these two areas. I think the idea was to offer a space for likely portalet, the porta potty space, and so that's where we definitely wanted fencing around the sides. But anything else that they equipment related to their services. Generally speaking, their vehicles already have any extra hoses and such on them, but sometimes they do have. I think they would have hoses, extensions, and that's really the main bulk of it. They the equipment vehicles, portalets, and then probably some minor tools like the hoses. And then also inside the building is likely to have equipment storage as well.
And how many, so is it the company renting portalets? And how many portalets would be on the property?
We didn't just determine a number of portalets. Those are just the areas that we've designated as potential storage for equipment they would need.
Okay, so it sounds like the portalets that would be serviced at this site would be stored in the screened areas that we'll be discussing in a few minutes. That's what the purpose of those storage areas are. So Jean, the size of those storage areas could be filled, but we are going to hear about how those are proposed to be screened and managed. Okay, well, let's turn to the staff report. You heard from Meredith about the main issues that we have to look more closely at. So let's get right to it and start with the very first one. On page 5 of the staff report, the first thing we need to do is be sure about what use we're reviewing, because the use we're reviewing dictates what standards we apply to make sure the use is suitable. So the initial matter is to decide whether this is considered a sewer-related facility use. And Meredith has given us the definition of that, which is it's defined as electric lines and distribution facilities, phone lines, cable lines, gas lines and distribution facilities, water supply lines, steam and air conditioning lines, and sewer and stormwater lines, also including substations, pump stations, and other related unmanned systems. So the staff recommendation is that, because this is a hauling operation, because this is not about pumping waste from the site to elsewhere or from elsewhere to the site, that it really doesn't fall under this utility kind of transmission concept. So that is the staff recommendation, is to find that this is not a sewer-related facility. And I want to ask DRB members if you agree with that or have questions about it as we determine the use. I've got a thumbs up and I've got a question from Claire. Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
I had a question. I think you were reading the definition of a utility facility.
Was I? Okay.
Yeah, it's right above it on the...
So I was just clarifying.
It's number 141.
Thank you. You're right. I read the wrong thing. A sewer-related facility is within the class of utilities, which I just defined, and is defined as facilities for storing, pumping, or treating sewage. That makes more sense.
It may be that it's a sewer. That definition is the sewer-related facility, right?
Yeah. Okay. The one that I just read. So that's what we're deciding on. Do we believe that this is a facility for storing, pumping, or treating sewage? Well, we know it's not treating sewage. It's not a sewage treatment plant. Alicia, did you want to jump in?
I feel like I need to clarify that it does say and treating, not or. That's all.
Thank you.
So it's pumping and treating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So are there any DRB members who feel strongly that this is a sewer-related facility?
I think it is.
Okay.
I do.
You do? Okay, so we have one board member who feels this is a sewer-related facility. The definition says that it involves treating sewage, but that doesn't happen on the site the way it would at a wastewater treatment plant.
This also refers to as storing.
Yes. Storage is temporary when the trucks come in, it sounds like, and I think my sense, and based on what Alicia said, the facility has to do all three of those things. It has to store, pump, and treat the sewage to count. Okay. Is there anyone?
Sorry, just from an interpretive standpoint, you really have to take the whole sentence as a whole. You can't just pick and choose. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Okay. So are there other, besides Jean, are there board members who think this is a sewer-related facility? Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, I just like Meredith directing this to you. The last statement Can you read that sentence in which all three are contained? I'd like to hear the whole thing.
Sure. So this is on page 5 of the staff report. A sewer-related facility is within the class of utilities, which is a defined term, uses, and is defined as facilities for, quote, facilities for storing, pumping, and treating sewage.
Okay, the operative term, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
The operative term seems to be "and," so
yes,
we're treating the three as a unit. So I would agree with the conclusion that you have reached on that.
Okay, so we are not going to treat this as a sewer-related facility, and that means that it will not be subject to conditional use approval. Go ahead and unmute Meredith if you want to add something.
I think I hate to say this, you might actually have to have a vote on that because it's a major determination. I mean, maybe you can roll that in at the end, but if you just have a vote on it now, it's dealt with and you don't have to go through that part of the staff review. I know that's what we've done previously.
Okay.
It makes it, when it matters for how you're going to review the application.
It wouldn't hurt. So that means we need to decide which 7 of us are voting. So of the 2 alternates, Claire and Jean, which of you would like to engage on this application? You know, Jean, you've served us well in the last 3 meetings. I don't know if Claire wants to step in and give you potentially a break next week. I don't know if that's, we don't usually do this in the public part of the hearing, sorry.
Understandable.
I want to just, Meredith, I have to take exception to the statement you just made. I don't think it's quite a necessity for us to make a determination as to whether we're reviewing it singularly or all 3 items at the same time. I think we've established a general outline for the review, and I don't feel we need to take it further at this point. We can take testimony and then finalize that.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't think that's being proposed. I think we're just putting our stamp on our decision that it's not a sewer-related use, a sewer-related facility. We're not analyzing it any further.
And I mean, it's getting late, so things are going to start getting a little fuzzy here. But I just want to pursue that for a second. So, what does that gain us that we determined before a final vote that it's not a sewer-related facility?
That's a big question. So determining what the use is, a sewer-related facility would be subject to conditional use review, whereas the other uses taking place on this site, including automotive repair, are not subject to conditional use review.
Okay. So
it affects the parts of the zoning bylaw that we'll have to use to approve the project.
I want to be very clear, again, as we get later into the evening, that I am not comfortable voting on that as a singular issue. You know, maybe at the beginning at 7 p.m. Of the next meeting, perhaps we could revisit that. But I think this is a very highly potentially technical area that I'm just not comfortable voting on it right now.
I agree with Kevin.
Okay. I would like to proceed with this review as though it is not a sewer related, I keep forgetting, a sewer related facility. If we receive evidence that leads us to believe otherwise, that it is something that is for storing, pumping, and treating sewage, then I think we can continue to the very end of the staff report and do the conditional use review.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay. I hear from Claire, and others may have as well, that if we continue to the July 6th hearing, she will not be present. And so that means that Jean will be one of our 7. Is that okay with you, Jean?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So given the hour and that we have the applicant's consultants and everything with us, I think I'd like to continue, sally forth, as was said earlier, into the remainder of the application. I'd like to hear more about the shrubbery.
Well stated.
So, now that we've, thank you. Very good. So let's start our review. So the first thing we're going to look at is the category of standards called general standards that apply to all development. And what I'm going to do is kind of move through the ones on which there seems to be agreement, and invite board comment if kind of in batches. So here we go. I'll give you page numbers as we go. On page 6, we've got section 3002, dimensional standards, which staff find the requirements are met. The same is true for 3003 and 3004, accessory uses and structures and demolition. Staff finds that these requirements, the requirements for these sections are met. Do any DRB members have questions about dimensional standards, accessory uses and structures, or demolition? And my intent is to be expedient, not to be rushing anybody. So if you do have questions, do ask. But if there's nothing to talk about, we won't belabor it. Okay. So I'm going to move on next to section 3005, which is riparian areas. This is on page 8 of the staff report. And what we have in the staff report is that what's being proposed is for about 2,400 square feet of parking and outdoor storage that would appear within the riparian buffer, but that quantity of impervious surface falls under the 20% coverage that is allowed within the buffer. That is what I've heard. And then I'll get to you in just a second, Alicia. Then we have heard that there would be disturbance to the buffer from the installation of the stormwater system outfalls, which could be subject to a waiver. So, so Alicia, go ahead and go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, there's 2 buffers for this area. There's the water setback buffer and the riparian buffer. So the actual impervious surfaces are within the water setback buffer, not the riparian. So the riparian buffer is 25 feet from the top of the bank, the water setback's 50. So we do encroach the water setback, and that's the 20% that you mentioned that we're well under. And the riparian buffer is the area limited to, the disturbance 2 is limited to the outfalls.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Great, does anyone have any questions about, any board members have any questions about what about this part of the application?
I just say I don't have any issue with the outfalls inside the buffer. I think, you know, we can move forward on that. I hope the board also feels that way.
I agree.
Thank you. So in order to grant that finding that it is acceptable to have those outfalls within the riparian buffer, we do need to grant, my understanding is that we need to grant a waiver. So I'm just going to ask Alicia, I'll put you on the spot and ask you 3 questions about the location of those outfalls to ensure that our waiver requirements are that a waiver is warranted. So the first thing we need to know is that can these outfalls be located outside of the riparian buffer?
No. Would you like me to elaborate? Due to the existing conditions. The outfalls can't be outside of the riparian buffer due to the current conditions of the existing soils. Infiltration on this site is not feasible, so therefore we have to have a oversurface or closed drainage surface piping system to get the stormwater off of the site after a rain event. So with the Winooski River bounding the entire northeast to southeast side of the site, that's where we need to discharge, and unfortunately with the elevations it ends up being in that riparian buffer.
Okay. Great, thank you. Once you've done this, does the proposal have new, compared to existing conditions, does the proposal have new or greater adverse impact on the natural functions of the surface water and land within the riparian area?
No.
Let me,
this.
Okay. we need to, sorry, I'll put that another way. We need to prove that this proposal does not create new or greater, compared to existing conditions, impact on the natural functions of surface water.
So this project does not create greater or new adverse impact. This stormwater outfalls are creating an initial disturbance that are going to be stabilized with stone to dissipate energy of runoff, and then also planting of woody vegetation to kind of reestablish that area. So both are allowing the refunctioning of that riparian buffer area, as well as now the stormwater is going through a treatment system, whereas currently there's no stormwater treatment on the area. So I think that's worth mentioning.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I actually had a question about the current stormwater situation. Do you know where the water is draining currently? Is it just going right into the river from that paved area?
Yes, a significant portion of the site drains directly over the bank. A lot of it ponds and then evaporates as time goes on, and then there is some that I think flow probably to the north where there's the wetlands there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. That's good. Chime in. Do chime in with questions. So the last question is this the minimum development in the riparian area that's necessary? I'm sorry. I'm going to ask that question a different way. We need to show that the proposed development is the minimum necessary to accommodate. The proposed development in that area is the minimum necessary to accommodate reasonable use of the property. Is there any less that could be done than what you're already doing?
No, I don't believe so. We have planned it this way to minimize as best as we can. We need to have the stone outfall to dissipate the energy before the water, as the water exits the pipe. So we need to have that area remain stone. We've tried to minimize the grading impacts as well as the pipe ditching. I'm planning on having kind of some construction notes, making sure that those areas are very well marked so that equipment isn't moving beyond the limits that they need to be especially in that area. And unfortunately, the way the site is fairly flat, we had to have two outfalls instead of one. Just we couldn't get all the water to one localized spot.
Okay. Are there other questions? Thank you very much. Do DRB members have any other questions about 3005 riparian areas and the way that the outfalls in particular will be in those areas? All right, thank you. We'll move on. So, moving through the staff report, still on page 9. Section 3006 is wetlands and vernal pools. Staff finds compliance. We've heard testimony that those will not be encroached upon. Steep slopes, starting also on page 9, is 3007. So, Alicia, could you describe we have to look at slopes that are disturbed over 15%. Could you describe for us the extent of disturbance of slopes that are on the site that are over 15%? How much is being disturbed and why?
Yes, I can. So this is the grading plan. Much of the stream bank along the Winooski River is significantly sloped, some of which is closer to 50%. And so there, of course, we'd already mentioned the disturbance to those two areas. We minimized as best as we could and kind of dealing with what we've got available. The remainder of the disturbance to steep banks, 15% area, there's some just kind of natural grades that are sloped over in this area. As I'm not sure how natural they originally were. The road got built, the railroad got built. I think it probably kind of pushed out that slope from stabilizing those two pieces. Of that, there's very clearly a plateau that was created at one point to make this a developed site, and so I think that those are kind of the flaring off of the development at whatever point in history they were. So those are the disturbed areas. And even again along the railroad, there's pieces and parts, but the disturbance to slopes is, let's see, less than 5,000 square feet for everything above the 15% mark. So I think most of that is the 15% mark, which is those kind of along the railroad and in this area here. And then there's the 2 localized outfalls that are being affected.
Okay. Great. So I want to check in with Meredith on procedure here. Meredith, I think, is your question in the staff comment about whether we need to go through the steep slopes criteria based on the kind of de minimis almost amount of disturbance?
Not really. I sort of went through those a bit, and I mean, there is technically, you're supposed to go through the steep slopes criteria because it's development above 30%. Everything, in my opinion, everything that Alicia has provided meets all of those engineered requirements. We're not talking about, we don't need engineered structural plans because the building isn't on the steep slopes. And you know, the only thing that's missing is a technically stamped and sealed plan from Alicia. That's the only thing I saw as actually being required to meet the steep slopes requirements.
Right, and so, sorry to cut. So Kate, you just saw that my stamp is down here, and this is one that Meredith had mentioned to me, and in the staff report as well. And so I have these available. I did stamp them sent, and I will submit them for the record, and I can submit them tonight so that Meredith has them if we want to post it prior to, assuming there's a continuation prior to that meeting, or certainly for the record.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll turn it over
regarding the outfalls.
Yes.
I was just wondering, Alicia, if you calculated the expected flows and velocities that are going to be coming out of those pipes during this.
Yep. I have done, as part of the stormwater system and the modeling, the Vermont state requires treatment for this site because we're directly discharging to the Winooski. We're not regulated by the 110 and 100-year storms. So we're establishing the treatment based on the 1-inch water quality volume standard storm. And then I did check some higher storm events to make sure that the velocities are still non-erosive, and that's the stone that we're placing is intended to dissipate velocity even further. Did I answer your question, Joe?
You're kind of breaking it up a little bit, but it sounds like you double checked to make sure that we don't have too high a velocity coming out of these pipes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I apologize for the breaking up.
Okay.
Okay. That's a good question because it's in everyone's interest to make sure the outflow doesn't further erode the stream bank or cause sedimentation or acidity. Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted.
Nope. That's all right. That's all right. But do pipe up if you want to. I want to make sure we don't neglect you just because you don't have video. So, all right. Good. So, do board members have any questions about steep slopes and whether our standards for steep slopes are met? Staff advises that they are met. Kevin and then Claire.
Yeah, I think Meredith has done due diligence on that issue, and I think we can just allude to her findings in our report, in our decision.
Thank you. Claire, did you want to add something as well? Oh, I thought I saw a wave, but it might have just been a page turn. All right. Very good. Thank you. So continuing through, on the staff report, page 10, we have section 3008 and 3009, erosion control and stormwater. And both of those are subject to state permits that stand in for the requirements of our zoning bylaw. So would the applicant be open to a condition that those permits would need to be submitted to be part of the record for our permit, for our local permit? Okay. So are there any board questions about erosion control or stormwater? Okay.
Stormwater in general, including treatment. I was hoping that the engineer could elaborate a little bit on the treatment method. It looks like it's a singular unit. I'm just kind of wondering how, I guess I don't need to know in depth how it works, but just does it require regular maintenance? Is it something that will still work if it's not maintained?
So you're all fully aware we're working on a couple different stormwater proprietary systems to see which is better suited for this site. So there is one shown and it's called out as a context storm filter. We're also looking into Aqua Shield storm filter. So any stormwater system needs to be properly maintained, and in order to stay in compliance with our state stormwater permit, we do have to do annual inspections. As well as, you know, kind of you do the occasional drive by and make sure things that are looking right. But there is a requirement through the state to have annual inspections, and it has to be a certified person to do that type of inspection. And any type of maintenance item that's found needs to be immediately rectified before you can kind of be in the good graces. Which really means, you know, there's enforcement issues and such like that, but Malone Properties does inspect their properties annually and make sure that the sites are working. It's a detriment to everyone when a system's not working properly, including the site.
Okay, that was a very satisfactory answer. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. All right, any other questions about erosion control or stormwater? Okay, we'll move on. The next item is on page 11 of the staff report, and it's section 3010, access and circulation. What we have heard and are seeing in the staff report is that this isn't a site for the public, so it's not coming and going all day long, but there is coming and going with the trucks that need to be serviced there. So we heard that there is two-way traffic throughout the site, that there is access out onto Route 2 as part of the roundabout project, and including over the railroad. I'm skimming through this and finding that this has been reviewed by the Department of Public Works and is believed to meet 3010. With sufficient capacity for the roundabout, the road that leads up to, maybe a little delay as large vehicles pull out onto Route 2, but traffic seems to be slowing down there anyway. So staff recommendation is to find that this access and circulation provision is met, and I would invite DRB comments or questions on that as well. Claire.
I was curious on the number of trucks. What would be the frequency of them coming and going, and the number of employees? And I guess you've mentioned that it's not a place that the public would visit, so basically be kind of the employees coming and then that truck traffic. So I was curious on how many trucks are coming and going during the day.
Sure. There's proposed to be about 30 employees at this facility. So you could assume they would arrive in the morning and leave in the evening. And then additionally, of course, those same employees, some of them are office, and some of them are on-site or off-site, I suppose, employees. So they would take a vehicle with them and employee equipment and go to a site. Typically, they go all day until they're ready to return in the evening. They kind of do all of their stops, and they go to the treatment facility plant to do any type of offloading in between, and then continue on, and then they'd come back to, at the close of their day, provided there's no kind of mechanical issues with the equipment. So it's not expected to have in and out after every hour or any. There's no time, because it really depends on the number of customers that are being serviced at that time. But there's kind of the trip generation manuals that we can refer to for different type of uses, and I feel like those are just guidelines. They're a little up to interpretation sometimes, but this particular use just kind of falls into the light industrial use where there's expected to be 157 trips per day, only 21 and 22 in the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour respectively. So that really is very comparable to the number of employees there. Also worth mentioning, the hours of operation are a little bit offset from typical peak hours. They are more of a 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening company than an 8 to 4:30. So the peak hour of commuting employees are less likely to coincide with other peak users.
Thank you. Claire?
Is it a follow-up question? I think because that access is coming onto Route 2. Have you sought the Section 111 permit for the access on a state highway?
So this particular project is a little different because it already has the access point is already considered to be an access for this mission. Yes. So this location right here, this crossing, and this is the state road or Route 2. So this access point it's already back here where we're connecting to. I accidentally drew the dark lines into the crossing, but our work will start beyond the railroad right of way. So we don't need to have that working in the right of way permit. And also, is this section of road? For some reason, I'm thinking the actual section of road is under the town, the city's authority. But either way,
I don't know. Okay, so we're seeing just as we ask questions about access and circulation, the image you've just showed us is that this is a road that's going to be a fourth spoke off of the roundabout.
Right, and it is an existing fourth spoke. So you may not even yes, and you might not even think of it because by the time you see the building, you're down here, and so you're thinking you're not even wondering where they come in. But the access point right now is currently here. The railroad already has their crossing, and they have signals and such there. That was part of this roundabout project in 2009.
That's
finished in
accurate.
2010.
That's pretty accurate, Claire. Kate.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I see. Great. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that when I was working in construction, we actually used this lot as our loading area for heavy construction vehicles and moving materials in and out. It's appropriate for large vehicles and things. There was no issues there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, any other questions about access and circulation? All right. So next, I'd like to take a peek at the parking and loading standards, which begin on page 14 of our staff report. Staff finding is that the proposed parking areas meet the requirements of this section in terms of the size of the parking spaces. The number of parking spaces is not too many and not too few. There is not a requirement for electric vehicle charging station because only 30 of the 43 or 45 spots are for employee use. The others are for vehicles. So EV charging is not required. Are there questions about parking and loading or anything else that the applicant would like to add?
Not particularly.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to pause there. It's 9:59, and we've reached what I think could be a natural stopping point. We've gotten to the, we've gotten through the general use standards and have stopped at the, or the general standards rather, and are stopped at the special use standards. So I'm going to ask what the pleasure of the board is and the applicant in terms of how we proceed. Would you like to take another fixed amount of time and get through as much as we can? Or given that I think that we need to continue this hearing to do it well. And so my first question is the applicant willing to have this hearing continued to then our next DRB meeting?
Yes, I would wonder if we could potentially discuss the items that are relative to Mr. Rooney and Ms. Hoffmeyer's presence here, so that they don't need to come back, if that would be appropriate, or one of the two. Leave us here, and if anybody has any questions about site, but maybe he can join us for the next one if there's questions about the soil. But I'd like to not have to force them to come back.
Okay.
I'm more than
willing to. Thank you. Is that agreeable to DRB members?
Yes, the specifically testimony from the two attendees specific to this project, and then we will continue the meeting to the next DRB meeting.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So, Alicia, I would take your advice on, we can hear from both John Rooney and Sarah Hoffmeyer, and I would take your advice on which we should hear from first, which topic we should tackle first.
Sure.
Oh, Kevin?
Just real quickly, I'm not sure that these two attendees were sworn in. Maybe they were, and I just missed that.
They were sworn in. Thank you. Yep. All right.
So I don't know if there's a natural flow. Mr. Rooney is our architect, so if there's any questions about the design of the building, and then Sarah is our landscape architect, certified horticulturalist, and so she helped us with our landscaping design. So I don't know if there's a preference on which. I don't think it matters. Just to kind of get us through those ones.
All right, we'll go alphabetical by last name. And so, Sarah, why don't you, you worked on the landscaping, and so for everybody's reference, landscaping is covered by section 3202, and we have information about that on page 19 of our staff report. So Sarah, do you want to take a couple minutes to tell us very briefly about the landscape design, and then we'll take a peek at the staff report.
Sure. It is a bit of a challenging site because there are a lot of limitations with the railroad, the wetland, the river, of course, and then where the stormwater treatment areas are. So, and then of course, the fact that the site needed to be capped for soil remediation. So as far as it was being a brownfield site. And so that limited kind of where to put some of the plants and the trees. But looking at the western side of the property along the railroad, I think the best thing to do, and what is in this plan, is to create just small berms so that it's helping with the screening, it's helping with the health of the plants. I think that's the biggest thing, is how to get long-term success out of these plants. So to give it more soil volume, so to add a little bit more soil to allow the tree roots to really take and then to become shade trees. So the species that are chosen are pretty rugged. They can really take a beating. So Freeman maple, it's salt tolerant. It's a combination. It's a combination of silver maple and red maple, so it's fast growing. But it's just a really rugged species. Honey locust, again, another rugged species. These are all pretty quick growing species because I think establishment is really important so that they can get to be that big size and do their job of intercepting stormwater, intercepting rainwater, and also casting shade, So with all the impervious surface, lessening the amount of heat that's coming off of that site. I'll ramble if if you want me to, but I'll take whatever questions, whatever direction you want to go in.
Yeah, that's a good overview. It gives us the context of the site that you're working in, which informs what why you put different things in different places. So that's good. The staff recommendation conclusion is that this complies with all the minimum planting areas and the number of species, and provides sufficient shade trees along the travel aisle and in the parking area. And then there's the buffer as well. So maybe I would just turn it over to my fellow DRB members as to whether there are any questions about the landscaping plan.
About on the far left of the diagram, so towards the end part of the building.
Are you talking about to the we'll say it left of the addition?
Correct. Yeah. Far left. Yeah. Would there be any proposed trees on that end?
So there's oh, go ahead, Alicia. There's a if you're looking to the further north, there's actually a natural area that is adjacent to the storage area. And in any landscape, one of the most important things is to preserve and protect the existing mature trees, because it takes a long time for them to get like that, and that's a big investment. So if you can see in between where the wetland boundary is, and then the fence of the, right next to the storage area, that there's a section of natural, it's like a natural woodland area.
Yeah.
There we go, that'll be protected. So no additional trees are needed there. It's not expected to be disturbed.
Thank you.
And also, Jean, just to mention, so a lot of this area in here is sidewalk. So it's to help give enough space so that the accessible vehicles and also these employee vehicles can access that front entrance. And so we don't have any plantings directly on this. This area here, it is kind of a grassy area, and we haven't designated plants there. That doesn't mean that there won't be plants ending up there.
Thank you. Do DRB members have any other questions about the landscaping and screening?
I'd just like to thank the applicant for a very well prepared plan. I think it saved us a lot of time here from our review, and really makes the process go smoother. So thank you very much. This is great.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, if we think of follow-up questions, oh, sorry, does someone want to jump in there? If we think of follow-up questions, we're allowed to ask them. But it seems like that is a good overview of the landscaping on the project. Thank you, Sarah. So what we'll do next is turn to John Rooney and hear a little bit about the architecture. And I'm going to cross-reference that again with our staff report. So what we need to determine is whether the design has compatibility with the neighborhood in which this project is located. So it's on page 23 of our staff report, and it's section 3207 of the zoning bylaw. I'm just gonna, we don't do this as often because we so often get projects in the design review district, but I'll just read it. Section 3207 requires architectural standards for all projects requiring major site plan approval with the intent to ensure that proposed development will be compatible with and enhance the visual appearance of the street and neighborhood and exhibit consistent design integrity in all building components, including roof forms, windows and entrances, building materials, facade details, etc. We're in the Eastern Corridor neighborhood, and there are a series of architectural standards there at the bottom of page 23. that I'm not going to read. But maybe we could hear from John just with a very brief, like probably less than 5-minute overview of the design and how it meets those standards. Thank you for bearing with us, John.
I can do it in a lot less than 5 minutes.
All right.
Do we have any the pictures up, or everybody's familiar with the renderings?
Thank you, Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia. Well, as you know, this is an industrial building, and industrial buildings, by their nature, tend to be very blocky because they're large. They usually have flat roofs, and this building is no exception. But what we tried to do is through texture and color and scale, change the look of the building and give it interest. Plus, you know, in indentations, and obviously the existing building is just a rectangular box, so we are stuck with that. But a new addition, we tried to break up the facade to meet the requirements and to give the building visual interest. The yellow-orange part that you see at the back is where the offices are located. So we use that change in color and height to differentiate the office space from the warehouse workspace. And then the materials, as you probably read, are indicated on around the bottom of the workshops. We used block in 2 colors to give a striation, which again is applying texture to complement the metal siding, which would be is very smooth. So there's a nice contrast in texture. Plus, the concrete block is a more durable material down near the ground, where you have salt and you have potential for damage from vehicles and that sort of thing. And the office portion, again, is metal, because metal is you know, a very typical exterior material for this kind of building. So we thought it was very appropriate. And on the warehouse or the industrial shop side, we used the vertical siding, and by using a couple of different shades, again, it just adds texture and color and breaks down the scale of the building. And again, with this type of building, it just breaks it down from a monolithic kind of structure, and to give it appeal. There's a cutout in the corner where I put a canopy to protect the entry to the shop. And in hindsight, I'm looking at it, and I think I would do the fascia of that canopy in the yellow to draw in the color of the office. Minor detail. I'm always tweaking with things like that. And that's pretty much it. Are there any questions?
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions?
So the structure is a metal structure. Does it have a stone veneer in the bottom? Is that
concrete block?
Concrete.
Yeah, I'm suggesting like a split face concrete block. We have 2 bands, a darker and a lighter, and I'm thinking the darker one maybe we do with a split face, and then the lighter ones maybe smooth face, again to play up the different textures.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
The metal sheathing. What kind of metal is it, and how do you expect it to age?
Well, it'll be a pre-finished, factory finish that would age.
So coated or painted?
Yeah, but it'd be a factory. They're factory finishes. I'm not sure exactly whether it's a Kynar or we haven't got there are a number of different manufacturers out there, and we haven't specified exactly which manufacturer that at this point in time.
Okay, I guess I would just be concerned about certain metal sheetings can rust, or where they're riveted they can rust, and that definitely affects the look of the building over time.
All right. Well, the panels they're making nowadays are much improved over the past, and the vertical ones would have hidden fasteners, so they wouldn't be exposed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from board members about the building? I will ask. I appreciate hearing about the design characteristics, the artistic pieces of it. But I'm going to ask a boring question, which is, could you? I don't see any mechanical equipment, any vents or compressors or anything in the diagrams in these building diagrams that we're looking at now. Can you tell me where those will be and where they'll be visible from?
At this moment, I cannot. We would need a mechanical engineer to provide us with, but that is a very good point. It may be necessary to screen them unless we can put them back, locate them back farther on the roof where they wouldn't be visible from the street.
Okay. All right. Well, just for thinking about that, and for DRB members' consideration, the standard we've got to meet there is mechanical equipment, electrical meter and service components, and similar utility devices, whether at ground level or mounted on the building, shall be screened from view at the front property line with materials that are compatible with the building's predominant exterior materials. That's what we're going for. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, so this is directed to Mr. Rooney. When you get into the HVAC systems and the compressors and so forth, it would also be useful to, you're not in any kind of residential area there, but in the river corridor, sound travels quite a distance, and compressors are one of the things that often become the source of noise pollution in a situation like that. So I'd like to ask you if you would keep that as part of your review when you get into designing that.
No, I don't quote me on this, but the office space, which would probably be air conditioned and obviously heated, and it's only a small percentage of the square footage, and we'll probably be using, I think we'll be using rooftop units, which means that the sound wouldn't be a problem. The warehouse shop areas, my feeling is at this point in time, they will probably just be heated internally, so they won't have compressors on the exterior. But I don't know at this moment in time what our heat source will be, our fuel source for heating and cooling.
Okay.
So even though it's a large building, a good percentage of it would have very little in terms of mechanical equipment on the roof. Mm-hmm. There'd be exhausts for dealing with the trucks and equipment.
Okay. I'm just. Oh yeah, Alicia, go ahead.
I think there was also discussion about putting it behind the raised roof portion of the building. So a lot of the roof is 22 feet, and then that office block is 26 feet tall. So there was consideration about putting it kind of behind that already elevated 4-foot buffer of a roof. At least it would buffer from certain sides. That's the initial thought.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Right, and there are mini splits.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hear Patrick trying to speak, but I can't hear you very well. So if you'd like to chime in, would you please try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
The units will be behind the lower roof addition. The addition is going to be 5 feet higher, but the units will be behind that. They will be hidden.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good. While we have John Rooney here, I want to ask one more question that is actually in a different section of the bylaw, but we're not tonight, but on another night, we're going to talk more about section 3206, solar access and shading. And one piece of that requires that the roof surface of new buildings be flat, which it is, and be physically and structurally capable of supporting a certain number of solar collectors. Will this roof be physically and structurally capable of supporting some solar collectors?
Yes.
I'm seeing
That'll be up to the structural engineers.
It will be, John.
Will it? Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make note of that. Roof will hold solar. Thank you. That was one item where we had
the roof of the addition.
The roof of the addition. Good clarification. I'll be safer bet. That's good. All right. Great. So that brings us through landscaping and some of the design and compatibility considerations. Are there any other questions for John or Sarah? All right. So if it's amenable to all, I would like to propose that this application be continued to our next hearing. Is that still acceptable to the applicant?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion from Kevin to continue this to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is on July 6th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kevin, a second by Jean, and now I will take the roll. All those in, Joe?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm Kate, and I'm voting yes as well. And Claire, I've left you off that because you won't be continuing on this. Sorry, don't need to feel left out. Great. So the application for 260 River Street will be taken up again on July 6th. We look forward to talking with you more, and thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, remaining business of this board for the evening is approval, getting back to my agenda, reviewing and approving the meeting minutes of February 18th, 2020 and June 1st, 2020. I'm moving to those in the big staff packet to see who can vote on each of these. All right, so eligible to vote on the February 18th minutes are myself, Rob, Claire, Michael, Roger, and that's all. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 18th, 2020?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 18th, 2020.
Thank you. Motion by Rob, second?
I'll second that.
Second by Claire. I will do the roll of those eligible to vote. to approve the minutes from February. Roger?
Yes.
Thank you. Rob?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And I'm Kate, and I vote yes. Thank you. We've approved the minutes of February 18th. Next, we will entertain a motion to, we need to approve the minutes of June 1st, 2020. Eligible to vote are myself, Kevin, Rob, Michael, Jean, and Joe. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes as printed, or approve the minutes as printed for June 1st, 2020?
So moved.
Motion by Joe, is that right?
No, that wasn't me.
Second? No.
So moved by Rob.
Motion by Rob, second by?
Jean.
Second by Jean. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll do the roll to vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm Kate, I'm voting yes. Very good, thank you very much. We've approved our minutes, caught up with our backlog. Other business, our next meeting date is July 6th at 7 o'clock. I believe it will be, we will be Zooming together again. Any other business or announcements?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the,
Hold on, I couldn't unmute fast enough. Just a quick note.
Meredith.
And this is for you, it's also for the public, and you'll get something in writing, all the DRB members. A quick early notice that we are only going to have one hearing in August. The second hearing, the August 17th hearing, is canceled. But the August 3rd will be the only potential DRB hearing in the month of August.
Thank you, Meredith, for letting us know well in advance. Good for everyone to know. Any other announcements?
I was
Okay,
making
hearing
the-
none, I'll entertain.
Yeah, I was making the motion to adjourn our meeting this evening.
Motion by Kevin,
I'll second. This is Joe.
second from Joe. I'm not going to do this by roll. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
We are adjourned.
Okay. It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much.
See you,
Great job.
everybody.
Appreciate
Take
your work.
care. Have a safe week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Good night. Thank you.